Hello everyone, back again with me. Today I will making video, uh, especially about point view rated about chapter novel, especially ebook. So because this is April, I think I just wanna making a video when I'm read it, not same ebook with I daily life read because I'm still read about our Italy ebook, but for making video, especially making video, for PVR, I just wanna change the novel to get more book I read it, so to get my perspective, another perspective, and with the different book, even different story. But right now, I'm find the book from The Great Gatsby. It's a book from actually let's see. It's the book from F. Scott Fitzgerald. But why I'm interested in this book, because it's the first time ebook I see in book note without preference, without introduction. So I don't know who is F. Scott, but I just wanna think uh, I must understand about Gatsby, because its concept in the uh, 1700 until 1800, because the Gatsby is like word or slang for the uh, rich right now we know, or prosperity. So yeah, it's like interested to me actually, to make understand what is Gatsby or glamour, like that. So for the first I will read chapter 1, and yeah, let's read it with me. Chapter 1 about the Great Gatsby. No title for the chapter actually. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you had. He didn't say anymore, but we're always been unusually communicated in reserved way, and I understand that they mean a great deal more than that. In consequence, I am inclined to reserve all judgment, a habit that has opened up many curious nature to me and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. The abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appeared in a normal person, and so it came about that in the college I was unjustly accused of being a politician because I was privy to the secret grief of wild, unknown men. Most of the confidence were unsought. Frequently I have fainted sleep, preoccupation, or hostile levity when I realized by some unmistakable sign that an intimate revelation was quivering on the horizon. For the intimate revelation of young men, or at least terms in which they express them, are usually plagiaristic and marred by obvious superstition. Reserving judgment is a matter of infinite hope. I am still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that, as my father snobishly suggests, and I snobishly repeat, a sense of the fundamental decision is a parcel out unequally at the birth. And after boasting this way of my tolerance, I come to the admission that it has a limit. conduct may be founded on the hard rock or the wet marshes. But after a certain point, I don't care what is founded on. When I came back from the east last autumn, I felt that I wanted that the world to be in uniform and a spurt of moral attention. Forever I want no more riotous excursions with the privileged glimpses into the human herd. Only Gatsby. The man who gives his name to his book was exempt from my reaction. Gatsby, who represented everything for which I have an unaffected scorn in personality, if personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promise of life, as if he were related to one of these intricate machines that registered earthquakes 10,000 miles away. This responsiveness had nothing to do with the flabby impressionability, which is dignified under the name of the creative temperament. It was an extraordinary gift for hope, a romantic readiness such as I have never found in any other person, and which is not likely I should ever find again. No Gatsby turned out right in the end. It is what prey on the Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of this dream, that temporarily closed off my interest in the abortive sorrow and short-winded elation of man. My family have been prominent, well-to-do people in this middle western city for the three generations. The Carrows are something of clan, and we have a tradition that we are distinct from the dogs of Bushgals. But the actually founder of my line was my grandfather's brother, who came here in 51, sent a substitute to the Civil War, and started to wholesale hardware business that my father carries on today. I never saw this great uncle, but I suppose to look like him, with the special reference to the rather hard-boiled painting that hang in father's office. I graduated from New Haven in 1915, just a quarter of century after my father, and little later I participated in the delayed Teutonic migration known as the Great War. I enjoy the counter-rate so thoroughly that I can make restless instead of being the warm center of the world. The Middle West now seems like the ragged edges of the universe, so I decided to go east and learn to bound business. Everybody I know was in the bound business, so I supposed it could support one more single man. All my aunt and uncle talked it over as if they were choosing a prep school for me, and finally said, "Why, yes." With every grave, hesitant face, father agreed to finance me for a year, and after various delay, I came east permanently. I taught in the spring of 22. The practical thing was to find room in the city, but it was a warm season, and I had just left a country of white lawns and friendly trees. So when a young man at the office suggested that we take a house together in the commuting town, it sounded like a great idea. He found the house, a weather-beaten cardboard bungalow at the 80 a month, but at the least last minute the firm ordered him to Washington, and I went out to the country alone. I had an old Dutch and a Finnish woman who made my bed and cooked breakfast, and mother finished wisdom to herself over the electric stove. It was lonely for a day or so until one morning some man more recently arrived than I stopped me on the road. "How do you get to West Egg Village?" he asked helplessly. I told him, and as I walked on, I was lonely, no longer. I was a guide, a pathfinder and original settler, he had casually conferred on me the freedom of the neighborhood. So, with the sunshine and the great burst of leaves growing on the tree just as the things grow in the fast movie, I hate the familiar conviction that life was a beginning over again with the summer. Tree was so much to read, for one thing, and so much fine had to be pulled down out of the young breath-giving air. I bought a dozen volumes on banking and a credit investment security and stood on myself in the red and the gold like new money from the mine, promising to unhold the shining secret that only Midas and Morgan and Machinus knew. And I had the high intention of reading many other books beside. I was rather literally in the college. One year I wrote a series of very solemn and obvious editorials for the Yale News, and now I was going to bring back all such things into my life and become again that most limited of all specialists, the well-rounded man. Isn't just an epigram, life is much more successfully. Look at the front single window after all. It was a matter of change that I should have returned a house in one the strangers community in the North America. It was on the slender Riotus Island, which is extend itself due east of New York and where there are, among other natural curiosity, two unusual formation of land 20 miles from the city, a pair of enormous age, identical in contour and separate only by Corstisee Bay just out into the most domesticated body of salt water in the western hemisphere, the great white barnyard of Long Island Sounds. They're not perfect ovals like the H in the column story, they are both cross flat at the contact end, but their physical resemblance must be such of perpetual confusion to the gulls that fly overhead. To the Wiggles, a more arresting phenomenon is their dissimilarity in very particular except shape and size. I live at the West Egg, the less fashionable of the two. Taupe is the most superficial type to express the bizarre and not a little sinister contrast between them. My house was at the very tip of the egg, only 50 yards from the Sounds, and squeezed between two hog places that rented for 12 or 50,000 a season. The one on my right was a colossal affair by any standard. It was a factual imitation of some hotel, the Villa in Normandy, with the tower on one side. Spanking new under a tin beard, a raw EV and marble swimming pool, and more than 40 acres of lawn and garden. It was Gatsby Mansion. Or rather, as I didn't know Mr. Gatsby, it was mansion inhabited by gentlemen of the name. My own house was an eyesore, but it was small eyesore, and it had been overlooked, so I had a view the water, a partial view of neighbor lawn, and the consoling proximity of millionaires of $480 a month. Across the courtesy by the white palace of fashionable is a glitter along the weather, and the history of the summer really began on the evening I drove over there to have dinner with the Tom Buchanans. Daisy was my second cousin, once removed, and I don't know in the college, and just after the war and spent 2 days with them in the Chicago. Her husband, among various physical accomplishments, had been one and the most powerful am that ever played football at the New Haven, a national figure in the way, one of those men who reached such as acute limited excellence at the 21 and everything afterward savor of anticlimax. His family were enormously wealthy. even in the college. His freedom with the money was the matter for reproach, but now he left Chicago and come east in the fashion that rather took your breath away. For instance, he brought down string of polo ponies from Lake Forest. It was hard to realize that a man in my own generation was wealthy enough to do that. Why they came east, I don't know. He had spent a year in France for no particular reason and then drifted here and there unrestfully wherever people played polo and were rich together. Was a permanent move, said Daisy over the telephone, but I didn't believe it. I had no sight into Daisy here, but I feel that Tom will drift on the forever seeking, a little wistfully, for the dramatic turbulence of some irrecoverable football game. And so it happened that on one windy evening I drove over to East Egg to see two old friends whom I certainly knew at all. Their host was even more elaborate than I expected, a cheerful red and white Georgian colonial mansion overlooking the bay. The lawn started at the beach and rode toward the front door of quarter of mile, jumping over sundials and brick walls and burning garden. Finally, when it did reach the house drifting up the side bright, fine as a true from the momentum of its run. The front was broken by a line of French windows, glowing now with the reflected gold and the white oven to the warm windy afternoon, and Tom Butchman in the riding coach was standing with his leg apart on the front porch. He had changed since his New Haven years. Now he was a sturdy straw-haired man of 30, with a rather hard mouth and supercilious manner, two shining, arrogant eyes, and established Dominicans over his face, and gave him appearance of always leaning aggressively forward. Not even the effeminate swing of the riding cloth could hide the enormous power of that body that seemed to fill those glistening boots until he strained to the top lacing, and you could see a great pack of muscles shifting when his shoulder moved under this hemcoat. Is watch body capable of enormous leverage, a Carl body. His speaking voice, a groove husky tenor, adapted to impression of fractiousness he conveyed. There was a touch of paternal contaminant even toward people he liked, and there were men at the New Haven who had hated his guts. Now don't think my opinion on this material is a final. He seems to say just because I am stronger and more of man than you were. We were in the same senior society, and while we were never intimate, I always had the impression that he approved of me and wanted me to like him with some hers, defiant wistfulness of his own. We talked for a few minutes on the sunny porch. I got a nice place here, he said, his high placing about restfully, turning me around by own wrong. He moved a broad flat hand along the front vista, including its swept and second Italian garden, a half acre of deep pungent roses and snub-nosed motorboat that bumped the tide of sorts. It belonged to the mine the oilman. He turned me around again, politely and absurdly. We'll go inside. We walked through a hallway into the bright roller-colored space, fragrantly bound into the house by French window at the either end. The windows were azure and gleaming white against the fresh grass outside that seems to grow a little way into the house. A breeze blew through the room, blew certain in the at one end, out the other like pale sparks twisting them upward. The frosted wedding cake of the ceiling, and the ribbon over the mine color rug making shoulder on it is mine doesn't to see. The only completely stationary object in the room was an enormous couch on which two young women were buoyed up as though Euban and Uncle Pelon. They were both in the white, and their dresses were rippling and fluttering as if they had just been blown shag in the after a short flight around this house. I must have stood for a few moments listening to the whip and the snap of the curtain and the groan of the picture on the wall. Then there was a boom as Tom Buchanan shut the rear window, and the couch wind died about the room, and the curtain and the drugs and the young woman balanced slowly to the floor. The younger of the two was stranger to me. She was extended full length at her, and the fawn completely motionless and with her chin raised a little as if she were balancing something on it which was quite likely to fall. If she showed me out of the corner of her eyes, she gave no hint of it. Indeed, I was almost surprised into murmuring an apology for having disturbed her by coming. The other girl, Daisy, made an attempt to rise. She leaned slightly forward with conscious expression, then she laughed an absurd, charming little laugh, and I laughed to land and came forward into the room. I am paralyzed with happiness, she laughed again, as if she said something very sweetly and held my hand for a moment, looking up into my face, promising that there was no one in the world she so much wanted to see. That was a way she had. She hinted a murmur that the surname of the balancing girl was bigger. I heard it said that Daisy murmur was only to make people lean toward her, an irrelevant criticism that made it not less charming. Mm, at any rate, Miss Baker's lips fluttered. She nodded at me almost imperceptibly, and then quickly tipped her hat back again. The project she was balancing had obviously tottered a little and given her something of a fright. Again, a short apology arose to my lips. Almost any exhibition of complete self-sufficiency drove a stunted tear-bullet from me. I looked back at my cousin, who began to ask me questions in her low, trifling voices. It was the kind of voice and the ear follows up and down, as if each speech is an arrangement of noted that will never be played again. Her face was set and lovely with the bright things in it, bright eyes and a bright patient mouth. But there was excitement in her voices that men who had cared for her found difficult to forget a singing conclusion. A whisper listed a promise that she had done gay, existing things just a while since, and that were gay existing things hovering in the next hour. I told her how I stopped off in Chicago for a day on my way east, and how a dozen people had spent their love toward me. Do they miss me? She cried ecstatically. The whole town is desolate. All the cars have the left rear wheel painted black as a monitoring red, and there's persistent wail all night along the North Shore. How George's let's go back, Tom, tomorrow. Then she added irrelevantly, you ought to see the baby. I like to. She is lab C 3 years old. Haven't you ever seen her? Never. Well, you ought to see her. She is. Tom Watchman, who had been hovering restless about the room, stopped and rested his hand on my shoulder. What you doing, Nick? I am boatman. Who with? I told him. Never heard of them, he remarked decisively. This is annoyed me. You will answer shortly. You will if you stay in the East. Oh, I'll stay in the East. Don't you worry, he said, glancing at the daisy and then back at me as if he were alert for something more. I'd be a good damn fool to live anywhere else. At this point, his baker said absolutely with such a suddenness that I started. It was the first word she had uttered since came into the room. Evidently, it surprised her as much as it did me. For she yawned and with a series of rapid, deft movements stood up into the room. I am stiff, she complained. I've been lying on the sofa for as long as I can remember. Don't look at me. She restored. I've been trying to get you to New York afternoon. No, thanks, said Mrs. Baker to the four cocktail just in from the pantry. I'm absolutely in training. Her host looked at her incredulously. You are. He took down his drink as if it were a drop in the bottom of glass. How you ever get anything done is beyond me. I looked at Miss Baker wondering what is was she gone done. I enjoyed looking at her. She was slender, small-breasted girl with an erect carriage which she accentuated by throwing her body backward at the shoulder like a young cadet. Her gray, strained eyes looked back at me with a polite reciprocal curiosity out of a one charming, disconnected face. It occurred to me not that I had seen her or picture of her somewhere before. You live in the West, eh? She remarked contemptuously. I know somebody there. I don't know. I single. You must know Gatsby. Gatsby? Demanded Daisy. What's Gatsby? Before I could reply that he was my neighbor, dinner was announced that withering his stained arm imperatively under mine. Tom Buchanan complained me from room as though he were moving a chair to another square. Slenderly, languidly, their hands set lightly on their hips. The two young women preceded us out onto a rosy-colored porch open toward the sunset, where four candles flickered on the table in the dimmest light. Why candles? Objected Daisy, frowning. She snapped them out with her finger. In 2 weeks, it'll be the longest day in the year. She'll look at you stridently. Do you always watch for the longest day of the year and then miss it? I always watch for the longest day in the year and then miss it. We ought to plan something, yawned Miss Baker, sitting down at the table as we were getting into bed. All right, said Daisy. What will we plan? She turned to me hopelessly. What do people plan? Before I could answer, her eyes fastened with an odd expression on her little finger. Look, she complained. I heard it. We all looked. The knuckle was black and blue. You did it, Tom, she said accusingly. I know you didn't mean to, but you didn't do it. That's what I gained for marrying a brute of man, cried a big hulking physical specimen of a I hate that word hulking, objected Tom crossly, even in kidding. Hulking instead, Daisy. Sometimes she and Miss Baker talked at the once, unobtrusively, and with a bantering inconsequence that was never quite chatter, that was as cool as their white dresses and their impersonal eyes, and the absence of all desire. They were her, and they accepted Tom and me, making only a polite, pleasant effort to entertain or to be entertained. They knew that presently dinner would be over and little later the evening too would be over and casually. put away. It was sharply different from the ways where an evening was hurried from face to face toward its close in the continually disappointed anticipation or else in sheer nervous dread on the moment itself. You make me feel uncivilized, Daisy. I confuse on my second glass of corky, but a rather impressive claret. Can you talk about crop or something? I mean nothing in particular, but this remark, but it was taken up in unexpected way. Civilization going to pieces, broke out Tom fiercely. I gotten to be terrible presumptuous about things. Have you read The Rise of the Color Empires by this main Goddard? Why no. I ain't so rather surprised by this one. Well, it's a fine book and everybody ought to read it. The idea is if we don't look out, the white race will be utterly submerged. It's all scientific stuff. It's a been proof. Tom, getting very profound, said Daisy with the expression of unthoughtful sadness. He reads the books with the long word in the damn. What was the word we? Well, this a book are all scientific. Instead, Tom glancing at her impatient, this a fellow has worked on the whole thing. It's up to us, who are the dominant race, to watch out, or these other races will have control of things. We got to beat them down, whispered Daisy, winking frivolously toward the prevention. You ought to live in the California, began Miss Baker, but Tom interrupted her by shifting heavily in his chair. This is idea is that we're Nordic. I am and you are and after an infinitesimal hesitation he included Daisy with a slight nod, and she winked at me again. And we produce all the things that go to make civilization of science and art and all that. Do you see? There was something pathetic in his concentration, as if his complacency, more acute than of old, was not enough to him any more, when almost immediately the telephone rang inside, and the butler left the porch. Daisy sizes even the momentary intersectional and leaned toward me. I tell you family secret, she whispered enthusiastically. Is about the butter nose. Do you want to hear about the butter nose? That's why I came over tonight. Well, he wasn't always a butter. He used to be silver polisher for come to people in the New York and had silver service for 200 people. He had to police it from morning till the night until finally it began to affect his nose. Things went from bad to worse, suggested Mr. Baker. Yes, things went from bad to worse until finally he had to give up his potion. For the moment the last sunshine fell with the romantic affection. Even her glowing face, her voice compelled me forward breathlessly as I listened. Then the glow faded, each light deserting her with the lingering regret, like children leaving a pleasant street at dusk. The butler came back and murmured something close to Tom's ear, where even Tom frowned, pushed back his chair, and without a word went inside, as if his absence quickened something with her. Daisy leaned forward again, her voice glowing and singing. I love to see you at my table, Nick. You remind me of a, a rose, absolute rose, doesn't he? She turned to Miss Baker for confirmation and absolute rose. Was untrue. I'm not even faintly like a rose. She was only extemporizing, but a stringing warm flowed from her as if her was trying to come out to you consoles in one of Chu's breathless thrilling words. Then suddenly she threw her napkin on the table and excused herself and went into the house. Miss Baker and I exchanged a short glance consciously, devoid of meaning. I was about to speak when she sat up alertly and said, "Shh!" in a warning voice. A subdued implosion murmur was audible in the room beyond, and Miss Baker leaned forward and seemed trying to hear the murmur tremble on the wedge of coherent, sunk down, mounted excitedly, and then ceased altogether. "This is Mr. Gatsby. You spoke of his my neighbor," I said. "Don't talk. I want to hear what happened. Is something happening?" I inquired innocently. "You mean to say you don't know?" said Miss Bigger, honestly surprised. "I thought everybody knew." "I don't." "Why?" she said hesitantly. "Tom got some woman in New York." "Got some woman?" I repeated blankly. Miss Baker nodded. "She might have the disease not to be telephoned him at the dinner time, don't you think?" Almost before I had grasped her meaning, there was the flutter of dress and the crunch of leather boots, and Tom and Daisy were back at the table. "It could be helped," cried Daisy with a tense gravity. She sat down, glanced searching at the Miss Baker and at me, and continued. "I looked outdoor for a minute, and it's a very romantic outdoor. There's a bird on the lawn, and the thing must be Nickel come over and the corner of white start line. He is singing away." Her voice sang. "It's romantic, isn't it, Tom?" "Very romantic," he said, and then miserably calm to me. "It is like enough after dinner. I want to take you down to stable." The telephone rang inside strangely, and as Daisy shook her head decisively, and Tom, the subject at the stable, and the fact of the subject vanished into air among the broken fragments of the last 5 minutes at table. I remembered the candle of being lit again, pointlessly, and I was conscious of waiting to look squarely and everyone and yet to avoid all eyes. I couldn't, I guess, what Daisy and Tom were thinking, but I doubt even Miss Baker, who seems to have mastered a certain heartless skepticism, was able utterly to put the fifth guy's shrill metallic urgency out of mind. To certain temperament the situation might have seemed intriguing. My own instinct was to telephone immediately for the police. The horses, needless to say, were not mentioned again. Tom and Smakey's Baker, with the several feet of twilight between them, strolled back into the library as if to figgle beside perfectly tangible party, while trying to look pleasantly interested and little deaf. I followed Daisy around the chain of connecting verandas to the porch in front. In its deep gloom we sat down side by side, and we considered. Daisy took her face in her handles as if feeling its lovely shape, and her eyes moved gradually out into the velvet dusk. I showed the turbulent emotion possessed her, so I asked what I thought would be some sedative question about her little girl. "We don't know each other very well, Nick," she said suddenly. "Even if we're cautioned, you didn't come to my wedding. I wasn't back from the war." "That's true." She hesitated. "Well, I had a very bad time, Nick. I am pretty cynical about everything." Evidently she had reason to be. I waited, but she didn't say any more, and after a moment I returned rather feebly to the subject of her daughter. "I suppose she talked and eats and everything." "Oh yes." She looked at me absently listening. "Let me tell you what I said when she was born. Would you like to hear?" "Very much." "It show you How I gotten to feel about things. Well, she was less than an hour old and Tom was a god known where. I woke up and out the eater with a utterly abundant feeling and asked the nurse right away if it away a boy or a girl. She told me it was a girl and so I turned my head away and waved alright. I said I'm glad it's a girl and I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing girl can be this world. Beautiful a little fool. You see, I think everything terrible anyhow. She went on a confident way. Everybody thinks so, the most advanced people, and I know I've been everywhere and seen everything and done everything. Her eyes placed around her in defiant way, rather like Tom, and she laughed with a trifling scorn. Sophisticated. God, I'm so sophisticated. This is instance her voice broke off, ceasing to compel my attention. My belief I felt the basic insincerity of what she had said. It made me uneasy as though the whole evening had been trick of some sort to exact a contributory emotion from me. I waited, and sure enough, in a moment, she looked at me with absolute smirk on her lovely face, as if she had asserted her membership in rather distinguished secret society to which she and Tom belonged. Inside the Crimson Room bloomed the light. Tom and Miss Baker sat at either end of the long couch, and she read aloud to him from the Saturday Evening Post. The word murmurous and uninflated running together in shouting tune. The lamplight uh, bright on this boot and jewel on the autumn leaf yellow of her hair glinted along the paper as she turned a page with the flutter slender muscle in her arm. When we came, she held us silent from the moment we lifted and to be continued, she said, tossing the magazine on the table. In our next issue. Her body asserted itself with a restless movement of her knee, and she stood up. 10 o'clock. She remarked, apparently finding the time on the ceiling. Time for this good girl to go to bed. Jordan going to play in the tournament tomorrow, explained Daisy over at Westchester. Oh, you are Jordan Baker. I know why her face was a familiar. Its a pleasing, contemptuous expression had looked out at me from many photographers' picture of the sporting life at a civil and hot spring and the Palm Beach. I had heard some story or heard too, a critical, unpleasant story, but what it was I had forgotten long ago. Good night, she said softly. We make at the 8, won't you? If you all get up, I will. Good night, Mr. Carway. See you anon. See you anon? What is see you anon? Of course you will, confirm Daisy. In fact, I think I'll be arrange marriage. Come over often. Nick and I'll sort of fling you together. You know, look you up excellently in linen closet and push you out to sea in the boat and all the short thing. Good night, called Miss Bigger from the stair. I haven't heard a word. She a nice girl, said Tom after a moment. They ought to let her run around the country this way. Who ought to? Inquired Daisy coldly. Her family. Her family is a one on about 1,000 year old. Besides Nick going to look after her. Aren't you, Nick? She going to spend lot of weekends out here in the summer. I think the home influence will be very good for her. Daisy and Tom looked at each other for the moment in the silence. Is she from New York? I asked quickly. from Louisville. Our white girlhood was placed together there, our beautiful white. Did you give Nick a little hurt to heart talk on the veranda? Demanded Tom suddenly. Did I? She looked at me. I can seem to remember what I think we talked about the Nordic race. Yes, I'm sure we did it. It's short for crepe on and first thing you know, don't believe everything you hear, Nate. He advised me. I said likely that I had heard nothing at all, and few minutes later I got up to go home. They came to the door with me and stood side by side in cheerful square of light. As I started, my honor Daisy principally called, Wait, I forgot to ask you something and it's important. We heard you were engaged to a girl out west. That's girl, corroborated Tom kindly. We heard that you were engaged. It's legal. I'm too poor. But we hear it, insisted Daisy, surprising me by opening up again in the flower-like way. We heard it from the three people, so it must be true. Of course, I know what they were referring to, but I wasn't even visually engaged. The fact that gossip had published the bands one the reason I come is you can stop going with the old friends and account of rumor, and on the other hand, I had no intention of being rumored into marriage. The interested rather touched me and made them less remotely rich. Nevertheless, I was confused and little disgusted as I drove away. It seems to me that thing for Daisy to do was to rush out the house, child in the arm, but apparently there were no such intention in her head. As for poor Tom, the fact that he had some woman in the New York was really less surprising, and then he had been depressed by Pooh. Something was making him nibble at the edges of stale idea, as if his sturdy physical egoism no longer nourished his peremptory heart. Already is what deep summer on the roadhouse roof and in front of my side carriage, where new red gas palms set out in the pools of light, and when I reached my estate at West Edge, I ran the car under its set and sat for a while on the abundant grass roller in the yard. The wind had blown up, leaving a loud bright night, with the wings beating in the tree, and the persistent organ song as the full billow on the earth blew the frogs full of life. The silhouettes of moving cat wavered across the moonlight, and turning my head to watch it, I saw I was not alone. 50 feet away, a figure had emerged from the shadow of my neighbor mansion and was standing with his pocket regarding the silver paper of the star. Something in his leisurely movement and the secure position of his feet even on the lawn suggested that it was Mr. Gatsby himself, come out to determine that share was his of our local haven. I decided to call to him. Miss Baker had mentioned him at the dinner, and that would do for an introduction. But I didn't call to him, for he gave a sudden intimation that he was content to be alone. He stretched out his arm toward the dark water in curious way, and far as from him I could have shorn hers trembling. Involuntarily I glanced seaward and distinguished nothing except a single grain minute at the far way. That be even the end log. When I looked one more Gatsby, he had vanished, and I was alone again and quiet darkness. Alright, so from this chapter I get one sentences. The last sentence uh, about Gatsby. So it's tell about one man with the pure man uh, get engaged with one girl with the rich. So like I know, like I understand, the man feel uh, really want to be Gatsby because it's part like complicated or sophisticated when you are in the lower uh, status with the woman the high status. So that's why you must adaptation and to make a balance is right. But when they're try to connect it, they're just like sharing mind others perspective, but it influenced him to interested about Gatsby. So it's like George's in the financial actually our status. So yeah, that's the chapter one, and I excited to next read it chapter two. See you.